Hello and welcome once again to Straight Bat, my weekly video blog where we comment with a straight bat. Now, the US presidential elections have captured the imagination of the world in this week. It's gone, as they would say in American basketball, virtually into overtime. An election that went down to the wire and which could yet be settled eventually in the courts of that country. One thing, though, is undeniable. Whatever the final result, US President Donald Trump has once again confounded the media and pollsters with his strong showing. On voting day, remember, the poll of polls gave the Democratic challenger Joe Biden a lead of 8%, well outside the 3% margin of error. In all the key battleground states, Biden was leading and holding firm. So why did so many seasoned commentators and media pundits and pollsters get it so very wrong for the second presidential election in a row? Quite apart from the hazards of predicting an election in COVID times in a country where you had so many millions of mail-in ballots, which complicates the situation further, there is an X factor that deserves serious consideration. And that X factor is what I'm going to call the echo chamber bias of the chattering classes. As a boisterously unapologetic egotist, Donald Trump sharply divided public opinion in America and indeed across the world, with the result that the specter of defeat, that Donald Trump could be defeated, could be out of White House, almost appeared to enthuse those who believed that Trump needed to be defeated to end the right-wing project of divide and rule, and in a sense it would help restore some element of dignity and civility and decency to the US president's office. In particular, a nation that has been divided by the Black Lives Matter movement, divided sharply on race and class lines, needed a healing touch, and Donald Trump was not the man for the job. Now, that narrative failed to recognize that while people like us, if I may say so, may widely share that view that Donald Trump is unfit to be the President of the United States, there were those people like them who had a completely different view. And I think this heightened us versus them public discourse is what queers the pitch when it comes to both polling and media commentary on a US presidential election. Remember, elections aren't decided on WhatsApp groups of like-minded, voluble people talking to each other. They are decided amongst the vast multitude of the so-called silent voters. And that distinction, I believe, needs to be drawn. In a sense, the more Trump was lampooned, vilified by his critics, the more his score base got energized and solidified. Where his personal style of leadership and brazen disregard for institutions was rightly criticized for being anti-democratic, it also boosted his appeal amongst those who are impatient with one would call the behavior of the traditional political elites. Trump, in fact, is part of a global trend of leaders who have thrived on this larger-than-life personality cult as a winning formula. A trend that spans democracies and autocracies. You have Narendra Modi, you have Recep Erdogan, you have a Boris Johnson, you have a Jair Bolsonaro, Vladimir Putin, Xi Jinping, all leaders who've been propelled forward by their carefully sculpted image of political muscularity. The narrative is also distinctly similar. All these leaders inject a heavy dose of populist nationalism where they promise national rejuvenation. Nation first, America first. And that lies at the heart of the allure of a seemingly decisive, tough-talking political demagogue. But even amongst these strongmen leaders, Trump was an outlier. He is the showman businessman, someone who believes that he's also, for whom the White House is a stage. From a reality TV show like Apprentice He's now in the White House, once again setting the rules of the game. He has been always contemptuous in that sense of any political group identity, including at times that of his own Republican Party. Trump belongs to no one. He is sui generis, even in his narcissism that exists. While all strongman leaders at some stage or the other have been guilty of circumventing, short-circuiting institutional processes. Remember Narendra Modi with demonetization, for example. Trump is the most brazen. His repeated confrontations with the US Congress, the media, his own staff members reveals to my mind an unpredictable mind who can get up at midnight and on Twitter tell you what his next big foreign policy decision is. The COVID-19 crisis in particular, I think, brought out the worst aspects of Trump's style of erratic governance. The occupant of the White House can so recklessly disregard the fallout of a global pandemic, refuse to wear a mask, virtually disregard all the medical and scientific evidence before him, would suggest that this is an irrational mind at work at one level. Trump seems to be unwilling to even listen to sage advice that was being given to him. It was almost as if the virus did not exist for him in the parallel universe, this deluded parallel universe which he had created for himself. And yet, on the other big concern of 2020, the economic slowdown, Trump was rather successful in sending out a strong message that he was the right person to revive the American economy. The fact that growth figures have improved, that America is coming out of a recessionary spiral so quickly, the fact that unemployment figures are now down, all of this would suggest that Trump had got the economy right, and he was successful in spreading the optimism that he was the person who would unleash the true spirits of a free enterprise society like America. The strongman image in that sense is both an asset and a liability. People still remain attracted to leaders who they think can get the job done, who convey a certain sense of authority and self-confidence. At times that demeanor may display an element of bluster rather than offering concrete solutions, but they carry an aura around them of indestructibility almost. Trump's shrill rhetoric, his openly divisive agenda is dangerous for a pluralist society like America. But it allows a canny politician to prey on the fears, the anxieties, the xenophobic prejudices of white America. Now, to what extent can one capture these diverse popular sentiments without, in a sense, revealing one's own personal biases during polling or during media commentary, I think is critical when you're judging the mood of a nation. Many of us live in this tech-driven social media bubble on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram. Many of us are following people like us. And therefore, there is a distinct possibility that we end up tracking only those people who share our beliefs above all else. That we are all in some kind of a bubble where we are talking to each other rather than having a dialogue with people who have a contrarian viewpoint. In his latest best-selling book, Bob Woodward, the journalist of Watergate fame, decodes the Trump presidency in telling fashion. And let me quote him. All presidents have a larger obligation to inform, warn, protect, to define goals in the true national interest. It should be a truth-telling response to the world, especially in a crisis. Trump has instead enshrined personal impulse as a governing principle of his presidency. When his performance as a president is taken in its entirety, I can only reach one conclusion: Trump is the wrong man for the job. Now, Woodward's strong words are not wrong. I would agree in a sense with his assessment. What is also true is that in a deeply divided nation, not every American shared his view. And unfortunately, to my mind, pollsters and a partisan media never accepted or reconciled to this reality of a divided states of America. And to my mind, that's why they got the poll wrong. My postscript is this, and I turn from the US to India now. In the first week of May 2019, just before our general elections, after having crisscrossed the country for weeks, I did a short video blog where I forecast 300 plus seats for the BJP in the general elections. And I got a call from a senior editor at the time saying, "Are, I can see you two also have sold out. Can't you see the anti-Modi mood in the country? Kahan reh rahe ho?" After the election results, I just sent a message to that senior editor with one simple sentence. The mood of the country, sir, is not decided in your WhatsApp groups. It's decided on the dusty tracks, villages, towns of real India. That is true of India, ditto with America. We need to wake up at times and recognize that we cannot live in our echo chambers. That's it on this Straight Bat. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.